We are in a moment of recognition and awareness of the critical foundational need for housing assistance.
As we look towards the future, what keeps you up at night? Would be very interested to see where we go from here and what your thoughts are on that.
That's a big question. Right now, rental assistance is keeping me up. I'm very concerned about it. I'm so concerned because we have such a mix of moratoriums on evictions in the various cities, the various states. People don't know what it means in relationship to our eviction moratorium that we're putting on at the federal level. And of course, we can't give a starting date. And the landlords are very, very, very upset because they think they're going to be put at risk for being able to meet their mortgages and hold on to their properties, even though we also have included forbearance for them as owners of this property. But that is really bothering me right now.
This pandemic has been essentially the great revealer, not revealing much new to most of you on this call, but to much of white America, revealed the disparities in income and wealth, in housing, in the justice system, in our education system, in our healthcare system, infant mortality, maternal mortality, life expectancy, all of the racial disparities that our country simply has not worked particularly hard at addressing. In housing, it's Jim Crow and redlining, and then discriminatory policies locked in by the Trump administration.
Housing is the greatest determinant of educational success. Integrated, thriving, fair housing opportunities is the most powerful predictor for the success of children in schools. Housing is at the very core. Housing epitomizes the challenges that we've faced throughout our history in terms of racial equality, economic justice. Housing at its core is the single greatest source of income inequality in this country by denying Black and brown Americans opportunities that most white Americans take for granted.
This summer meeting hosts the future of housing and the key to the solution. I'm so glad you are connecting and discussing ways to move forward. It is truly an honor to be a part of it. So thank you for everything you do for our communities.
Public housing is foundational in terms of providing health and stability for American communities. In every community, there are people for whom the private market cannot provide safe, decent housing. In every community. Public housing is absolutely essential for people who are low or no income to be able to supplement the housing supply, and that's a way to do it in the most cost-effective fashion. We have never fully embraced this concept, but it is past time that we do so. Public housing is an important component, and where there is a thriving public housing component, the rest of the housing continuum will be in much better condition.
If we can really make progress on housing, it's a big part of the answer to civil justice. It doesn't stop police brutality. It doesn't stop hunger. It doesn't stop discrimination, but it sure plays a role in launching. It doesn't even stop the digital divide in our public schools, in our private school, in our schools generally, but it gives people a basis upon which to launch more opportunity in their lives. And you know that, and I assume that's why many of you could have answered that question better than I, because you devote your lives to this in your careers.
I'm so grateful for CLPHA's support of my rental assistance legislation, but as you know better than most, this is only the beginning of a major push for reform. I want to hear from you, the experts. You advocate for an expansion of housing vouchers, which Chair Waters has advocated for in her recent Housing is Infrastructure legislation. We also need to revisit programs like Moving to Work and ask how these fit in to our concerted effort to provide more housing and addressed inequalities.
You know how we're living with the legacy of redlining and racial covenants with housing segregation and discrimination. Many of you may actually be managing public housing that was segregated by law at its creation. You struggle with this legacy when you work to bring equal economic, health, and educational opportunities to residents in neighborhoods that have suffered from long-term disinvestment. And you see it when you work to provide affordable housing in neighborhoods that already have access to those opportunities. Just as housing has played a role in creating and reinforcing racial disparities, it also has to play a role in solving them. You know, we already had a housing crisis in this country. I mean, all of your jobs were difficult in January and February and been made immensely more difficult with this pandemic.
It's important that we fully fund all public housing capital maintenance needs, repeal the federal government's cap on public housing construction. We need to build 5 million new homes for low and middle income people first and prioritize based on need.
This industry is strained at a time when we need it the most. So it's more important than ever to take action on the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act and ensure that affordable housing production can continue.
It's time for us to scale up our programs, ramp up our expectations, and get in this game to take advantage of what I think is a unique opportunity over the course of the next year. This is a once in a century political opportunity to get things right. And getting the housing equation right is essential to our success.
So making the 4% housing credit permanent and lowering the bond threshold test from 50% are priorities of mine in COVID relief packages, in addition to the larger effort on the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act. So thanks to your hard work and advocacy, these provisions, as well as the state allocation increase, a basis boost for projects for extremely low income households, and inclusion of both rural areas and Native American areas as difficult development areas were included in the Moving Forward Act, the House's expansive infrastructure plan. And we need to plan for the future, which is why it's so important that we're investing in building affordable housing, in policies that are going to have an impact long beyond this pandemic.
The foundation of what we need to do to give people opportunity starts with housing, as you know.
Change is never easy. Moving forward is not easy, but we're making progress. We have overcome significant obstacles, and I see the current state of our country and economy as an impetus for change.
It's time for us to be bold beyond measure. Now is the time to take the things that you have been working on for decades, fighting for table scraps, fighting to keep programs alive. Well, now's the time to move past table scraps and hanging on by our fingertips. Now is the time to take advantage of the new climate, the new recognition, the quest for racial equity and justice,